And welcome to One Hero a Day, where everyday courage lives on. Like and subscribe to hear a new story each night. The evening was quiet. The kind of stillness that settles over Texas highways after the sun has melted into the horizon and the heat gives way to a gentler breeze. Aaron Arias and Jamal Harris, just 19 and 17, were driving home from their job. Nothing remarkable marked the beginning of that night. Just the rhythm of tires on pavement, the low hum of music from the radio, and the easy silence between two friends who had spent enough time together to not need constant talk. Their car moved slowly through the fading light, trailing a few other vehicles in a calm, slow-moving line near downtown Lancaster. There was no rush. The night ahead promised little more than food, maybe some conversation, and sleep. But life, as it sometimes does, had chosen this ordinary moment for something else. As they rolled to a stop at a red light, a car pulled up beside them, a gray sedan, worn with age and not particularly memorable. Aaron's gaze shifted casually to the vehicle. It should have been nothing. Just another car. But in the back seat, a face, a girl. Her eyes wide and alert, not panicked but watchful. She seemed to be trying to say something without sound. Jamal leaned forward to get a better look. The girl didn't speak. Instead, her lips moved slowly, deliberately, a subtle motion, not quite a whisper, almost like, "Help me." At first, Aaron wasn't sure. It could have been imagination. Maybe she was mouthing lyrics to a song, maybe nothing at all. But something about her expression, a tense stillness, the way she didn't look at the driver, lodged in his gut. He looked at Jamal. Jamal looked back. No words. Just the quiet, mutual understanding that they had seen it too. The light turned green. The sedan rolled forward. Aaron kept watching. So did Jamal. The girl didn't move, didn't blink. Her lips moved again. That same haunting plea. "Help me." And just like that, the quiet of the evening cracked. Without fully knowing why, or what they were even getting into, Aaron eased his foot off the brake and pulled in behind the gray sedan. Not close enough to be suspicious, but not far enough to lose it. Jamal reached for the phone, his fingers shaking just enough to make the numbers feel slippery. He dialed 911. "Emergency services," came the voice on the other end. "Hi, we think we just saw a girl in the backseat of a car, and we think she might be in trouble," Jamal said, trying to keep his voice steady. "What do you mean by trouble?" the dispatcher asked calmly. "She mouthed something," Jamal replied. "Like, 'Help me.' We saw her lips say it, twice." The dispatcher asked for the make and model. Aaron kept his eyes glued to the car, rattling off details. Faded gray paint, a dented bumper, Texas plates. They didn't know the driver. They didn't know the girl. But something in the air had changed. Something real. "Stay behind the vehicle," the dispatcher instructed. "Do not approach. Keep us updated on its location." Aaron nodded, as if the dispatcher could see him. His hands gripped the wheel tighter. It wasn't fear yet. Not quite. But it was the first edge of something unfamiliar. Something serious. The sedan made a left turn. Aaron followed. Jamal kept the dispatcher informed, describing every turn, every signal, every bump in the road. They didn't know where the car was headed, but neither of them was willing to let it out of sight. This was no longer a quiet drive home. This was something else, something that would change them. The girl sat impossibly still. Even as the car moved through dim side streets, her silhouette remained fixed in the rear passenger seat. Eyes forward, body rigid, lips tight. Aaron had expected some kind of reaction once they began following, some visible relief or even a glance back, but there was nothing. Just that earlier message, clear as daylight yet surrounded by silence. "Help me." Jamal stared at her reflection in the side mirror, his breath shallow, his fingers clenched around the phone. The dispatcher was still on the line, voice even and composed. She was asking questions. How old did the girl appear? What was the driver doing? Did either of them see weapons? But Aaron and Jamal had no answers, only instincts. And one shared, pressing certainty: they couldn't stop now. The sedan moved into a residential area, coasting past quiet houses and dim porch lights. The night was growing thicker. Aaron eased off the gas a little, not wanting to get too close. "Is she looking at us?" he asked quietly. Jamal shook his head. "Number, she's not moving." "Still mouthing?" Aaron asked. "No," Jamal whispered. "But it was real. You saw it too." They didn't need to convince each other. The memory of her lips moving, not frantic, not loud, but desperate in its own way, had etched itself in their minds. Not a performance, not a joke. Just a silent, pulsing cry that pierced through the hum of the ordinary. The dispatcher was patient, walking them through the process of staying safe and observing. "You're doing great," she said gently. "Officers are en route, just stay behind. Don't confront." Aaron nodded again, eyes still locked on the taillights ahead. "How long till they get here?" he asked. "They're on their way," the dispatcher assured him. "Stay with me." And they did. Turn after turn, street after street. The sedan didn't seem to be fleeing, but it wasn't following any clear route either, as if the driver didn't have a destination, or was trying not to have one. "I feel like he knows," Jamal murmured. Aaron kept his voice low. "Maybe. Just don't let him shake us." The roads began to stretch wider now, leaving the tight-knit grid of neighborhoods for more open roads. The quiet began to take on a weight of its own. Every second they kept following, the tension deepened. It was like something pressing against their chests, slow and heavy. Aaron checked his rearview mirror, empty behind them. Jamal looked ahead, still no cops in sight. "Do you think she's scared?" Jamal asked softly. Aaron didn't answer right away. The question wasn't for confirmation. It was a thought, laid bare. A way to bring humanity into something so surreal. Somewhere in that car, less than 50 feet ahead, a girl was either waiting for help or slipping away from it. "She mouthed it," Aaron said, more to himself than to anyone else. "She asked us." That was the part he kept coming back to. She didn't scream. She didn't bang on the window. She didn't flail or make a scene. But she'd looked them in the eye. She'd made a choice, small and quiet. In the seconds before the light turned green, she had asked, and they had answered. The sedan made a sudden lane change, almost abrupt. Aaron caught up, keeping his distance but adjusting. Jamal tensed, watching closely. "She moved," he said suddenly. "I think she shifted a little." "Good or bad?" "I don't know." The dispatcher's voice cut in again. "Just keep eyes on them. Units are getting closer." "How close?" Aaron asked. "Maybe 10 minutes." It felt like forever. They'd been following for nearly 20 now, long enough for uncertainty to creep in. What if they were wrong? What if the girl had just been weird? What if this was nothing? But then the memory came back. The look in her eyes, that tension in her shoulders, the careful way she had mouthed those words. Not a joke, not confusion, not imagination. No, they'd seen it. They both had. Aaron adjusted his grip on the wheel. "Let's just keep her in view." Jamal nodded. "All the way." The sedan turned again, slipping into a more industrial stretch now. Fewer houses, more warehouses, fencing, shadowed alleys, places people could disappear into, the kind of place where help might not come in time. Aaron's heart picked up. His voice, however, stayed quiet. "Stay with me," he said. Not to Jamal, not to the dispatcher, not to himself, just out loud. A kind of vow for the girl whose voice they hadn't yet heard. They didn't know her name, not yet, not her story, not why she was in that car. But Aaron and Jamal knew something deeper, something you don't learn from headlines or classrooms. They knew when a moment asked something of you, and this was one of those moments. The sedan ahead continued its slow weaving path through the back roads of Lancaster. Its brake lights blinked irregularly, flashing crimson against the darkened asphalt. Each flicker sent a pulse through Aaron's chest, like a warning, like a countdown. "She's not moving much anymore," Jamal said softly, still watching. "You think he said something to her?" Aaron didn't reply. He didn't want to speak it aloud, the thought of threats, of fear thickening in that small space just ahead of them. The girl, so still. Too still now. It haunted him, that contrast. The girl who had been bold enough to mouth a cry for help, now frozen. "She knew what she was doing," Aaron finally said. "She picked us." The dispatcher stayed on the line. Every few minutes, she checked in, guiding them through the streets, offering updates. "2 patrol units are closing in. They'll try to intercept ahead. Just keep your distance." Aaron's knuckles were pale against the steering wheel. Jamal glanced at him. "You okay?" Aaron nodded, but his breath came short. "I'm not scared for us," he said. "I'm scared for her." Jamal didn't respond, but his silence was agreement. Then something shifted. The sedan ahead slowed suddenly, too suddenly, as if the driver had spotted something. Aaron braked instinctively, easing his car back as they turned down a narrow road bordered by chain-link fencing. Warehouses loomed on both sides. There were no streetlights here, just shadows and gravel. Aaron leaned forward slightly, trying to make out the details. The taillights of the sedan bounced with each bump in the road. "We can't lose them now," he muttered. "We're not going to," Jamal said firmly. "We came this far." The dispatcher's voice returned. "Officers are within 2 minutes of your location. Stay on this road. They'll intercept soon." But Aaron's worry wasn't about the officers anymore. It was about the driver. Because this road, this sudden turn, didn't feel like coincidence. The car ahead began to slow even more. Then, without warning, it turned sharply into what looked like a gravel lot behind one of the warehouses. Aaron eased up, careful not to follow too closely. "I think he's trying to get off the main road," Jamal said. "Like he knows someone's behind him." Aaron's mouth went dry. "Do we back off?" Jamal's hand hovered over the phone. "We tell dispatch exactly where he turned. They'll do the rest." Aaron nodded. "Good." But still, he didn't stop watching. They pulled over quietly at the edge of the gravel lot, headlights dimmed, engine humming low. The other car was about 100 feet ahead now, half concealed by an old loading dock and rusting metal siding. The kind of place that had seen better days and worse nights. "Tell them this is where it happened," Aaron said. Jamal did, voice steady, words clear. "He's behind a warehouse. Looks like an old distribution center. Plates still visible." The dispatcher confirmed the location. "Units are 1 block out. Hold position. Do not approach the vehicle." And so, they waited. Time grew thick, the kind of minutes that stretch endlessly, each second echoing with the thrum of the heart. Aaron kept his eyes forward, not blinking. "You think she sees us still?" "I hope so," Jamal whispered. A flicker of movement in the sedan's rear window, a shadow, a shape leaning slightly to one side. But no clear face, no new signal. Just the ghost of someone still waiting. Then, faint but real, the sound of approaching sirens. Not rushed, measured, building. Aaron and Jamal didn't smile. Not yet. There was no victory in this moment, only the fragile hope that they had done enough. The dispatcher came through again. "Units are at the location. Do not engage. Stay where you are." Aaron turned off his engine. The gravel lot was silent now, save for the distant hum of tires drawing closer. Somewhere up ahead, in that gray car, half hidden in the dark, a girl sat alone. A girl who had taken the risk of mouthing two simple words and trusted two strangers to hear her. She didn't know who they were. They didn't know who she was. But somehow, across the space of a red light and a single moment of courage, they had found each other. The first patrol car pulled in silently. No lights, no sirens. It slipped through the narrow entry to the gravel lot like a shadow with purpose. The officers inside didn't exit right away. They assessed, observed. Then came the second car, its approach more direct. A calculated pincer from the front and the rear, boxing the gray sedan in. Aaron and Jamal watched from their parked car, windows down, hearts lodged in their throats. No drama, no shouting. Just the quiet choreography of law enforcement professionals preparing for something they hoped wouldn't escalate, but were ready for if it did. The dispatcher's voice came through again. "They're making contact. Please stay back." Aaron could only nod. He didn't even realize his hands were still clenching the wheel. His foot, hovering above the brake, trembled slightly. He felt suspended, stuck in this unblinking moment between fear and faith. Two officers exited their vehicles, hands near their belts but not yet drawn. One approached from the driver's side. The other moved around the rear. They kept their distance, calling out measured instructions. "Step out of the vehicle." No response. The officers repeated the command, louder now. Then, the driver's door creaked open. A man stepped out slowly. Older than Aaron expected, maybe mid-30s, tall, with a shaved head and a heavy jacket. He raised his hands slightly. He wasn't aggressive. He didn't speak. But even from a distance, Aaron could feel the tension crackle. The officers instructed him to turn around, hands on the roof. He complied. The second officer opened the rear door, and for a moment, just one short, charged second, nothing happened. Then a figure emerged, small, slight, blonde hair, a teenage girl in a wrinkled sweatshirt. She didn't run. She didn't cry. She simply stepped out, as if unsure her feet would still hold her. One of the officers reached for her gently. She flinched, then nodded. She let herself be led away. Aaron felt his lungs finally expand. Jamal exhaled beside him, voice low. "That's her." Aaron didn't move, just watched. The officers began searching the vehicle. One remained with the girl, speaking to her in hushed tones. She leaned forward slightly, covering her face with her hands. A universal gesture, shame, fear, exhaustion, maybe all of it. More squad cars began arriving. The scene filled out. Lights still off, no spectacle, just method, precision, Safety. Aaron felt his shoulders lower, though his muscles still ached from the tension. Jamal turned to him. "We did it, man." Aaron shook his head, eyes still locked on the girl. "Number she did. We just heard her." A few moments later, an officer approached their car. He was calm, his expression unreadable in the dim light. He signaled for Aaron to roll down the window. "You two the ones who called it in?" Aaron nodded. "Yeah." The officer glanced back at the scene behind him, then gave a tight nod. "She's safe. She says she didn't know if anyone would help." Jamal looked down, quiet. Aaron swallowed. The officer continued. "She was reported missing this morning, abducted outside her high school. The man in the car is known to law enforcement. There's a history." Aaron felt something hollow out in his chest. All the what-ifs they hadn't allowed themselves to think about now came roaring forward. "She didn't scream," he said. "She couldn't," the officer replied. "He threatened her, said if she tried anything." He didn't finish the sentence. The officer looked at them both, then softened slightly. "You made the right call. You probably saved her life tonight." Neither Aaron nor Jamal spoke. Not from pride, just the weight of it all. The enormity of what had almost happened, and what hadn't. Another officer came by, collecting brief statements. They answered questions, recounted what they saw, what they did. The girl was being taken into protective custody. The man was in handcuffs now, sitting quietly in the back of a squad car, as if none of it mattered to him at all. Aaron couldn't stop thinking about her face, that stillness, that whisper of motion, those eyes that pleaded without sound. He didn't even know her name, but he had heard her, and that had been enough. Later, as the scene wound down and the lot began to clear, the officer who had first spoken to them returned. "She asked if she could say thank you," he said gently. "We told her she didn't have to, but she wants to." Aaron hesitated. So did Jamal. It wasn't that they didn't want to. It was that they didn't know how to hold what this moment meant. But they nodded. A few minutes later, the girl stepped toward them, flanked by an officer. Her sweatshirt was zipped now. She looked impossibly young. She didn't say much, just two quiet words, the only two that mattered. "Thank you." Aaron managed to nod. Jamal gave her a small smile. Neither of them could speak. And then she was gone, ushered gently towards safety. Aaron watched her disappear into the night, and he thought, some people wait their whole lives to be called to something. For him, it had happened at a red light, on an ordinary night, in the quiet space between music and silence. The drive home was quiet. No music, no talking. Just the soft hum of tires against pavement and the occasional flicker of streetlights on the windshield. Lancaster, Texas, was asleep again. Its homes tucked beneath blankets of darkness, unaware of what had happened in the empty lots between. Aaron didn't realize how tightly he had been gripping the wheel until he finally let go. His fingers ached. The palms of his hands were damp. Every breath now felt deliberate, as though his lungs had forgotten how to function normally. Beside him, Jamal sat staring out the window. He wasn't scrolling through his phone. He wasn't texting anyone. It wasn't the kind of night you could post about. They passed the gas station where it had all begun. The light above Pump 4 still buzzed, casting a pale halo on the ground. Just a few hours ago, they were laughing, arguing about snacks, acting like teens were supposed to act. Now everything had changed. Jamal finally broke the silence. "You ever think about how many people didn't see her?" Aaron glanced over. Jamal continued. I mean, how many cars were at that red light? 10? 15? How many people looked straight at her and didn't notice? Aaron exhaled slowly. I don't know. It's not their fault, Jamal added quickly. It's just, she was right there, so close, and no one saw her. Aaron kept his eyes on the road. We almost didn't either, but they had. They had seen what others missed. Not because they were heroes, at least not in the way people throw the word around. It was something else. A pause, a stillness, a flicker of the human condition that spoke louder than fear. She mouthed it, Aaron said again, as if the words carried magic. Help me. And they did. That single decision to follow, to call, to believe, had pulled someone back from the edge. It hadn't felt brave at the time. It had felt terrifying, full of doubt. But now, on this slow drive through empty streets, it was beginning to settle in. They had made a difference. Aaron parked in front of Jamal's house. They sat for a moment, neither of them ready to say goodbye. It was hard to walk away from something that had bound them together in such an unexpected, permanent way. You good? Aaron asked. Jamal nodded, then opened the door. Before stepping out, he paused. Promise me something? Yeah? Jamal looked him in the eye. We tell it right. If we ever tell it, we tell it quiet. No bragging, no, look what we did. Just the truth. Aaron nodded slowly. Just the truth. All right, Jamal said. Then he stepped out and disappeared into the shadows of his front yard. Aaron watched him go, then sat a little longer. The adrenaline had faded now, leaving behind a strange hollowness. Not sadness, not joy. Just a weight that he would carry differently now. A knowing that sometimes, in a world full of noise, the real cries for help are the ones whispered in silence. He finally drove home. The porch light was still on. His mother must have fallen asleep on the couch again, waiting for the sound of the front door. He didn't wake her. He didn't say anything. He just sat on his bed in the dark. The phone buzzed once. A message from Jamal. Just one word. Still thinking about it? Aaron replied. Yeah, me too. He placed the phone face down and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. He thought about the girl, her silence, her bravery. He wondered if she was safe now, warm somewhere, surrounded by people who understood. He hoped she felt less alone. Because in that single moment, sitting in the back seat of a stranger's car, lips forming words that carried everything she had left, she had reached out, and someone had reached back. Aaron closed his eyes, letting the night finally take him. In the morning, everything would be different, but for now, there was only quiet. And in that quiet, the knowledge that somewhere, a girl had lived, simply because they had listened. Morning arrived without fanfare. The sun rose slowly over the rooftops of Lancaster, washing the streets in pale amber light. Birds chirped in hesitant patterns, as if unsure whether it was safe to sing again. The world resumed, almost like nothing had happened. But something had. Aaron woke to the weight of memory, not the jolt of alarm. He sat upright in bed, rubbing the back of his neck, already feeling the stiffness from the tension of the night before. For a moment, he didn't move, just sat there. The silence in his room was full, not empty. Downstairs, he could hear the soft clatter of dishes, his mom starting her routine, the same way she always did. But to Aaron, the ground felt changed, tilted a little differently. He grabbed his phone, one unread text. Jamal, turn on the news. Aaron's stomach tightened. He padded across the floor and flipped on the small TV mounted in the corner. The morning news was already rolling, and there it was. The sedan, the warehouse, police tape fluttering in the early breeze. A news anchor's voice floated over the image. Teenage girl found safe late last night in what police are now calling a targeted abduction. Thanks to two young men who noticed something strange, a call was made that led to her recovery. Aaron sat down slowly. They hadn't used names. No footage of him or Jamal. Just facts. Clean, careful. The girl's name still hadn't been released. For privacy, the reporter said. She was recovering at a secure location. No details. He felt a strange sense of relief at that. The quiet was holding. His phone buzzed again. Jamal. We good? Aaron texted back. Yeah, but it's out there now. Jamal. Let's not say anything. Let people guess. Aaron smiled faintly. Truth. He headed downstairs. His mother stood at the stove, stirring scrambled eggs. She glanced over. You sleep okay? Aaron hesitated. Yeah, mostly. You were out late. Got caught up. Jamal and I were just driving. She nodded, unconcerned. Breakfast? He shook his head. Not hungry. She gave him a longer look now. Everything all right? He opened his mouth to say yes, but then paused. He didn't want to lie. Not exactly. But he also didn't know how to explain the kind of night that changes you when you don't even fully understand what's changed. So he simply said, yeah, just thinking. She softened. You think a lot these days. Aaron offered a tired smile. Comes with the territory. Outside, the world was waking up. Neighbors pulling trash bins to the curb, kids rushing to make the school bus, dogs barking in backyards. It was all so normal. And yet, everywhere Aaron looked, he felt like the air held more than it had yesterday. Like behind every closed door, there was a story waiting to be heard. One that might slip by, unless someone slowed down and listened. Later that day, he met up with Jamal. Not at school, not at a diner, just the park. The quiet one near the edge of town with the broken swing set and the fading basketball lines. They sat on the bleachers, neither saying much at first. Jamal passed Aaron a can of soda. You see it? Aaron nodded. They didn't name us. Good. Feels better that way. They sat in silence for a while, watching wind stir the branches overhead. The sun filtered through the leaves, making patterns on the ground that shifted and broke apart with each passing second. You think she's okay? Jamal asked finally. Aaron nodded slowly. I think she's got a shot now. Jamal exhaled. Feels weird, doesn't it? What does? This feeling, like we were part of something, but no one really knows, and we're not supposed to tell them. Aaron thought about that. It's not about being known. It's about what got done. Jamal gave a quiet laugh. You sound like someone's grandpa. Maybe I am. They both smiled a little. Then Jamal grew quiet again. You think she'll remember us? Aaron didn't answer right away. He stared out at the empty field, where once they played games that seemed to matter so much, until last night rewrote the scale of meaning. Yeah, he said softly. I think she already does. And in that moment, they both understood. Some stories don't need to be told loudly. Some heroism lives in silence, in the spaces between names and headlines, in a nod at a red light, in a decision to stay behind and watch, in the kind of friendship that doesn't need applause, just the truth. And the truth was this. They saw someone in danger. They listened when she couldn't speak, and they acted because it was the right thing to do. Nothing more, but nothing less. News spreads fast in small towns, even faster when it's about something rare. By the next afternoon, whispers had already taken root in the hallways of Aaron and Jamal's community college. Teachers spoke in hushed voices. Students traded theories over lunch. A story was circulating about a girl, a kidnapping, and two unnamed teens who had spotted something off and made the call that changed everything. No names, just silhouettes and guesswork. Aaron kept his head down. He knew that sooner or later, someone would put two and two together. But for now, he wanted the moment to stay untouched, protected from the noise of public opinion. Jamal, on the other hand, carried the weight differently. He walked a little straighter, not from pride, but responsibility. He understood now how fragile safety was, how close harm could come without anyone noticing. That understanding shaped his silence like armor. They met again that night, back in Aaron's car. No destination, just motion. They drove with the windows cracked, the spring air thick with the scent of grass and distant barbecue smoke. Neither spoke for the first few miles. Finally, Jamal broke the quiet. "You think we'll ever see her again?" Aaron kept his eyes on the road. "I don't know. Maybe. But maybe we're not supposed to." Jamal nodded. "That's probably true." It was hard to shake her face, though. Not just the fear, but the bravery beneath it. That look in her eyes that said she knew how dangerous it was to ask for help, and asked anyway. Aaron pulled the car into a vacant lot, overlooking the city lights from a ridge just outside town. They sat there for a while, letting the wind roll in through the cracked windows. "You know what gets me?" Jamal said, his voice soft. "What?" "She trusted us. She didn't know us, couldn't even say our names, but she still looked at us like we were her last chance." Aaron leaned back, arms crossed behind his head. "We didn't earn that, but we honored it." That quiet truth settled between them like dusk. It wasn't until later, when they returned to town for a late bite, that something shifted. As they walked into the diner, the same one they'd been going to for years, a woman behind the counter raised her head and paused. "You boys all right?" Aaron and Jamal looked at each other. "Yeah," Aaron said carefully. "Why?" She wiped her hands on a towel. "No reason, just glad you're safe." Her words hung heavy. They ordered their food and sat near the back, trying not to wonder how much people knew. Maybe it was just coincidence. Or maybe word had found its way here too. As they waited, an older man at a nearby table turned to them. "You fellas hear about that girl? The one they found last night?" Jamal blinked. "Yeah, crazy stuff." "Good thing someone saw something," the man continued. "Takes guts these days. Most people keep their heads down." Aaron nodded slowly. "Yeah, lucky someone stepped up." The man nodded and returned to his coffee. But Aaron and Jamal sat a little straighter. They weren't looking for recognition. That had never been the point. But hearing someone speak about it, not in a tabloid tone, not for drama, but as a quiet act of respect, meant something. Later that night, Jamal posted something vague on his social media. Just one sentence. "Sometimes the world needs you to pay attention." No hashtags, no context. Still, people responded. Dozens of comments. Friends asking if he was okay. A few heart emojis. No one guessed the truth, not really. But the message had struck a chord. Aaron saw the post and smiled. It was enough. A whisper into the universe, not about what they had done, but what anyone could do. A few nights later, Aaron dreamed of the red light again, the moment her eyes met his. the stillness, the silent plea. But this time in the dream, she smiled. Not a big smile, not triumphant, just a quiet one. Grateful. He woke with a lump in his throat. Some moments stay with you. They echo through your days, reshaping how you move through the world, how you look at strangers, how you listen to silences. Aaron knew this was one of those moments, and every time he approached a red light from then on, he looked a little closer, just in case. Days passed, but the moment didn't fade. Aaron and Jamal tried returning to routine, class, part-time jobs, long walks through the aisles of gas stations where nothing ever really changed. But underneath the surface of normalcy, something stirred. The world had not returned to what it was before that night. And neither had they. Aaron noticed it first in the way people looked at him. Some of their classmates gave him second glances. Not quite suspicion, not quite curiosity, but something in between. The kind of look that said, "I heard something." But no one asked directly. No one pushed. Jamal, meanwhile, felt it in his restlessness. He'd catch himself scanning crowds, reading body language like second nature. He noticed when someone flinched, when a hand lingered too long, when silence felt too heavy to be natural. "You ever feel like we opened a door?" he asked Aaron one afternoon, sitting on the hood of Aaron's car, feet resting on the bumper. Aaron tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "Like, before we didn't think this stuff happened around here. But now that we know it does, we can't unsee it. You know?" Aaron nodded slowly. "Yeah, like the world's a little more fragile than we thought." They sat in silence for a while, watching kids ride bikes across the parking lot of a nearby school. Laughter echoed. Tires screeched lightly as they turned corners. For a moment, everything looked untouched. But the boys knew better now. Later that week, Jamal's uncle, a retired cop, stopped by his house. He didn't say much, just handed Jamal a folded piece of paper. "She asked about you two," he said quietly. Jamal froze. "Who?" "The girl." Didn't say much, still in shock. But she asked who called, who saw her. Jamal opened the paper. Inside was a single sentence in unfamiliar handwriting. "Thank you for not looking away." His breath caught in his chest. He called Aaron. They met at their usual spot, the edge of the park where they could be alone. Jamal handed him the note without saying anything. Aaron read it once, then again. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Finally, Aaron said, "She remembered us." Jamal nodded. "She remembered you?" "No," Aaron replied. "She remembered us." They folded the note carefully and slid it into the glove box of Aaron's car. Not as a trophy, but as a promise. A reminder of the vow they had made that night. To listen, to notice, and when needed, to act. From that moment on, they started seeing things differently. They volunteered at school events. They joined a local safety program, learning how to de-escalate situations and recognize signs of distress. Not because they wanted medals, but because they knew firsthand what could be missed if no one was paying attention. People started to notice, not the story, but the change. "You've been different lately," Aaron's professor said one day after class. Aaron shrugged, just thinking more. The professor nodded. "That's not a bad thing." At home, Jamal's mom found him reading articles about trauma recovery. She didn't ask questions, just watched him quietly and said, "You're growing up fast." He didn't respond. How could he explain that the world had cracked open in front of him? And now, every step he took felt like walking across thin glass. One night, they drove by the warehouse again. The building was locked up now, with city signs posted out front. No trespassing, no entry. But the memory lived there, in the gravel crunch under tires, in the buzz of the street lamp above, in the silence before the sirens. Aaron parked the car, and they sat quietly for a moment, headlights off. Jamal reached into the glove box and took out the note. "She's safe now," he said softly. Aaron nodded. "Yeah, but there are others. We won't know who they are. We won't see all of them, but they're out there." Aaron leaned forward, resting his arms on the wheel. "Then we keep looking." It wasn't about paranoia. It was about care, about noticing, about remembering that sometimes all it takes is one glance at the right moment to change everything. They drove away from the warehouse without looking back, but they both knew. The story hadn't ended there. It was still unfolding, not in big headlines or breaking news, but in the way they moved through the world, with eyes open, with hearts steady, and a promise stitched into their silence. They would never look away again. There are moments that never make it into the news, moments that happen quietly, unnoticed, undocumented, but they matter just the same. For Aaron, it happened on a rainy Thursday afternoon. He was waiting in line at the corner store, earbuds in, half listening to a podcast about something forgettable. Just ahead of him was a girl, no more than 15, standing awkwardly, arms wrapped around her backpack. Her hoodie was soaked through, and her shoes left little puddles where she stood. He didn't think much of it at first, but then he noticed how she kept glancing over her shoulder, how her hands trembled when she handed the clerk a crumpled $5 bill, and how, as she turned to leave, her eyes locked on Aaron's for just a second too long, not with fear, but with something like a question. He took his earbuds out. As she stepped outside, a car pulled up. An older man in the driver's seat leaned over and opened the passenger door. The girl paused, and Aaron felt it. The echo of a moment, the shadow of a pattern. He stepped outside, keeping a casual distance. Rain slid down the back of his neck, cold and insistent. The girl hesitated at the door, and then, slowly, took a step back. The man leaned out. "Get in." She didn't move. Aaron called out gently, "Hey, everything okay?" She turned toward him, her lips parted slightly, as if unsure whether to say yes or no. The man looked at Aaron, irritation flickering in his eyes. "She's fine." Her Uncle Aaron didn't flinch. "Cool, just making sure." The girl spoke finally. "I don't know him." It was only 5 words, but they were enough. The man cursed under his breath, slammed the door shut, and peeled off, tires hissing in the rain. Aaron walked toward the girl, keeping his voice steady. "You want me to call someone for you?" She nodded, eyes wide. Later, when the police came, she was safe. No harm done. Just a near miss. Aaron didn't give his name. He just waited until she was inside the patrol car, then walked back to his own. He sat there, heart pounding quietly in his chest, watching raindrops gather on the windshield. Not every story ends with sirens. Some just end with someone being seen. That evening, he told Jamal about it. "Same look," Aaron said. Same way she hesitated. Jamal nodded, quiet. "It stays with you, doesn't it?" "Yeah, like, once you learn to see it, you can't unsee it." They sat on Jamal's porch, letting the world drift by. Somewhere, a dog barked. Music thumped faintly from a passing car. "Do you think that's what being a hero is?" Jamal asked after a while. "Just noticing things no one else does?" Aaron thought about it. I think being a hero is doing something about it, even when no one knows, even when it's hard. Jamal looked down at the porch wood beneath his feet. It's hard, he said softly, knowing how close people can come to disappearing. But it's harder, Aaron replied, knowing we could have done nothing. That night, they made a choice. Not to be saviors, not to chase danger, but to stay ready. To be the kind of people who lean in when others turn away, who ask the awkward question, who pause at the right moment. Because sometimes that's all it takes. Not capes, not headlines, just someone paying attention. Spring turned to summer in Texas. Long days stretched with heat, the scent of cut grass, and a kind of quiet tension that clung to the air like humidity. The rhythm of life resumed, but for Aaron and Jamal, things never quite went back to how they were. They laughed, joked, played basketball like they used to. But there was always an edge now. Not sharp, but certain. Like two people who had seen behind the curtain and couldn't pretend anymore. One evening, they were invited to speak at a community forum hosted by the city's Neighborhood Watch program. The request came unexpectedly, via a formal email from a volunteer coordinator. Aaron nearly deleted it. Jamal talked him out of it. They're not asking for a show, Jamal said. They just want us to be honest. Still, it felt strange. They had tried so hard to stay in the background. Now they were being asked to step forward, to say something about that night, that choice, that girl. When they arrived at the small auditorium, there were only about 50 people. Parents, a few teenagers, some off-duty cops, even a school counselor or two. Nothing flashy. The coordinator welcomed them with a warm smile. "You don't have to say much," she whispered before they stepped up. "Just share what you saw, what you felt." Jamal went first. He spoke slowly, his voice low, hands in his pockets. "I didn't think anything was wrong, not at first. We were just two kids at a red light. But there was something in her eyes, something that didn't sit right." He paused, "And we almost drove away. I'll be honest, we almost didn't call." Aaron took over, his tone quiet but steady. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if we hadn't. If we just kept driving like it wasn't our business. But it was our business. She made it our business. With that one look." The room was silent. Not heavy. Just listening. Afterward, a woman approached them. She looked to be in her late 30s, with kind eyes and tired shoulders. "My daughter was taken when she was 11, she said. "We got her back, but not everyone does. Thank you. For noticing, for acting." They didn't know what to say. Jamal just nodded. Aaron gave a quiet, "I'm glad she's home." Back in the car, they sat for a long time before pulling away. "You think we're supposed to do more of that?" Jamal asked. "Talk about it?" "Yeah. Speak. Share." Aaron shrugged. "I don't know. I'm not sure we're the experts." "You don't have to be an expert," Jamal replied. "You just have to care." The next week, they spoke at a local high school assembly, then at a church youth group. People started reaching out, not reporters, but regular folks. Parents, coaches, a woman who ran a self-defense class, a librarian who wanted to put their story in a reading circle. Aaron began to realize something. Their story wasn't just about that one night. It was about choice, about seeing the signs, even when they were small, about trusting your gut, even when it feels awkward, about stepping forward, even when fear tells you to sit still. They never mentioned their names in the media. They refused interviews with national outlets. But in their community, word spread. and something shifted. Kids began talking more openly in class. Teachers added short lessons about body language, about crisis cues, about listening when someone doesn't have the words. Even the local police department started offering bystander training seminars. It wasn't a revolution, just a ripple. But it was real. One evening, months after it all began, Aaron received a message through a private account he didn't recognize. It was simple. Just a photo of a sunrise over a quiet field, and a note. "You saved more than one life that night. Thank you." He didn't know if it was from her. He didn't need to. Some things don't need signatures to be understood. He showed Jamal, who stared at it for a long time. "I guess that's the thing," Jamal said. "You don't always know how far a moment reaches." Aaron nodded. "But you show up anyway." The seasons continued to shift, but the echoes of that night still lived beneath the surface. By now, Aaron and Jamal had learned how to carry it, not as a burden, but as a quiet truth folded into their lives. It didn't make them special, just aware. And with awareness came something else: responsibility. They began volunteering at the local youth center. It started small. Jamal helped coach a weekend basketball clinic. Aaron assisted with tutoring kids who were falling behind in school. They never brought up the warehouse, the call, or the girl, but they didn't need to. Their presence spoke louder than any story. One afternoon, a boy named Malik, barely 13, stayed after the clinic ended. He wasn't the best player, always a little behind on the drills. But Jamal noticed something in the way he watched the others, like he was waiting for permission to belong. "Everything good?" Jamal asked, tossing him a water bottle. Malik hesitated, then shrugged. "Yeah, just don't want to go home yet." Jamal didn't pry, but he didn't look away either. "Cool," he said, sitting beside him on the bench. "We can hang out a little longer." It became a pattern. Malik stayed late. Aaron helped him with homework. Jamal taught him how to shoot with both hands. Slowly, Malik opened up. Not with words, but with presence. Laughter came easier, shoulders less tense. Then, one Friday evening, Malik asked Jamal quietly, "You ever call the cops on someone even if it's not your business?" Jamal looked at him. "Yeah," he said. Malik didn't speak after that, just nodded, eyes focused on the floor, but the question lingered. Aaron and Jamal talked that night, uneasy. "We don't know what's going on," Aaron said. "No," Jamal replied, "but maybe he just needs to know that if something is going on, he's not alone." They made a quiet agreement to keep showing up, keep listening, keep creating space for people like Malik. Because sometimes, what saves someone isn't a dramatic rescue. It's a slow, steady presence. That same month, the youth center director invited them to a staff training. "Just share what you've seen," she said. "Not the story, the signs, the instincts, the parts no one teaches you." And so they did. They talked about what happens when someone looks away too quickly, about reading silence, about the way fear shows up not in screams, but in small hesitations, pursed lips, darting glances. It was the first time Aaron described it out loud. She didn't say a word, not a sound, he told the room. But somehow, she screamed everything she could through a single look. The room was quiet, and in that silence, the lesson hung in the air. That being a bystander is a choice. That courage often looks like hesitation transformed into action. At the end of the session, one of the staff members approached them with tears in her eyes. "My niece was taken years ago," she said. She didn't make it back. If someone like you had seen her, maybe. They didn't have answers. Just steady hearts. That night, as they sat in Jamal's car under the dull orange glow of a street lamp, Aaron said softly, "I think we were supposed to see her. Not because we were better, but because we were willing to see." Jamal leaned his head back against the seat. "Yeah, and now we see everyone a little clearer." It wasn't a curse, it was a calling. And even though they were still just two young men trying to figure out the world, they understood something most people didn't. That a single moment of awareness can reroute a life. And that sometimes showing up quietly, fully, deeply, can be the most heroic thing a person ever does. Summer dusk painted the sky in deep pinks and soft orange. The sun hung low as if reluctant to let go, casting long shadows across Jamal's neighborhood. A breeze rustled the magnolia leaves. Somewhere, wind chimes clinked lazily. Aaron sat on the porch steps, sketchbook in hand. He didn't draw often anymore, but tonight his pencil moved in slow, thoughtful strokes, tracing shapes he couldn't quite name. Faces, maybe, or fragments of memory. Jamal emerged with 2 bottles of iced tea, tossing one to Aaron without a word. He sat down beside him, his knees brushing the old wood. "I've been thinking," Jamal said after a long pause, "about how that night split things." Aaron looked over. "Split things?" "Yeah," Jamal said. "Like, there's who we were before we saw her, and then there's who we've been ever since." Aaron considered it. It didn't feel big in the moment, just a red light, a glance, a gut feeling. "But everything changed after," Jamal murmured. And he was right. Because after that night, things were different, not in a dramatic, cinematic way, but like water slowly carving a path through rock. Invisible until you step back and look at the shape it's left behind. They became more than friends, more than just 2 guys who shared a rescue. They became brothers in something deeper. One afternoon, Jamal's mom pulled Aaron aside. Her voice was soft, proud. "I see the way you 2 carry each other," she said. "You've given him something no parent can, a sense that when the world goes dark, he's not alone." Aaron didn't know how to respond, so he just nodded, heart full. It was then he realized the rescue didn't stop at the girl. It had expanded quietly, invisibly into their lives, into their homes, into every kid who heard their story and felt a little less afraid. One evening, they attended a city council meeting where the girl's case was mentioned during a report on community response programs. Her name wasn't spoken, but Aaron recognized the file number. The report noted how community awareness had been instrumental in her recovery. The councilwoman nodded toward the back of the room where Aaron and Jamal sat. She didn't point them out, didn't embarrass them. Just said, "Sometimes, safety comes from ordinary people making extraordinary decisions." They left before the meeting ended, but her words followed them outside. "Extraordinary decisions," Jamal repeated, almost to himself. Aaron shook his head with a quiet smile. Felt like just doing the right thing. They stood in the parking lot, watching the streetlights flicker on. "You ever wonder what happened to her?" Jamal asked softly. Aaron hesitated. "Every day." They didn't know her name. They had chosen not to, for privacy, for peace. But the image of her sitting in that back seat, lips pressed tight with hope and terror, stayed with them. She was the beginning of something, and beginnings have a way of echoing through every choice that follows. Later that week, Aaron ran into a woman at the grocery store. She was in her mid-40s, familiar in that vague way where you can't place the face, only the feeling. She tapped him gently on the shoulder. "You're one of the boys who made that call," she said. Not a question, a truth. Aaron nodded, unsure what else to do. She smiled. "My niece was in a bad place once. Someone saw her, called it in, saved her. You boys remind me that people still look out for one another." He thanked her quietly, then stood in the cereal aisle for 5 whole minutes afterward, hands shaking. He texted Jamal later. "It's wild how many lives are touched by a single choice." Jamal replied, "We just lit a match. Others passed it on." The message lingered in Aaron's chest all night. Not because it was poetic, but because it was true. The first time Aaron visited the warehouse again, it was on impulse. He had been driving home late from work, the radio murmuring softly in the background, headlights slicing through the dark. Without really thinking, his hands turned the wheel, and suddenly he was there, parked in front of the place where everything had shifted. It looked smaller than he remembered. Weeds had begun to take over the chain-link fence. The windows were boarded now, and someone had spray-painted a faded mural across the rusted metal walls, bright colors clashing with the building's past. He stood there a long while, hands in his pockets, the silence of the place loud in his ears. He didn't go inside. He didn't need to. He just stood at the fence and let memory drift over him. The red of the brake lights, the tension in Jamal's voice, the quiver in her lip, the weight of the unknown. A heavy breath escaped him, not sorrow, something like reverence. A few days later, he brought Jamal. "Didn't think I'd ever come back here," Jamal said quietly. Aaron nodded. "I didn't either, but I think I needed to see it one last time, just to remind myself that it was real." They stood together, side by side, as dusk crept in and the air cooled around them. "You ever think about what she's doing now?" Jamal asked. "Every day." "She probably doesn't think about us anymore." Aaron tilted his head. "Maybe not, but maybe that's a good thing. Means she's healing, moving forward." Jamal nodded. "Yeah, maybe." Then, unexpectedly, Jamal pulled a folded note from his pocket. "I wrote this," he said, "the night after we found her. Never showed it to anyone. I didn't know what to do with it." Aaron took it gently, opened it under the fading light. It wasn't long, just a few lines, written in Jamal's looping scrawl. "To the girl we saw at the light, you mattered, and we saw you. That's all. That's enough. Jamal." Aaron folded it again, his throat thick. They didn't leave the note. They didn't post it or share it. They just kept it, a private offering to a moment that would never leave them. Afterward, they drove in silence, but it wasn't heavy. It was full, like the calm after rain. In the weeks that followed, their lives picked up again. Aaron started community college courses in sociology. Jamal began mentoring incoming freshmen at the local high school. Neither of them planned these things with strategy or ambition. They just happened. Each small decision flowed naturally from the current of that single night. Aaron's professor asked him one day why he chose this field. He thought for a moment, then answered, "Because I saw what happens when someone notices the world. And I wanted to learn how to notice more." Jamal's mentees began opening up to him in ways he didn't expect. About stress, loneliness, pressure, pain. He didn't try to fix them. He just listened, asked questions, stayed close. One boy said, "You make it feel like I'm not just noise in the background." Jamal smiled. "That's 'cause you're not. No one is." By now, their story was no longer a story. It had become a rhythm, woven into the way they walked through life, the way they listened, the way they paused when others rushed forward. Not to be heroes, but to be present. One afternoon, Aaron got a call from the youth center. "A girl asked for you," the director said. "Didn't give a name, just said she thought you'd understand." He arrived to find a teenager sitting quietly on the steps. She looked up, guarded. "You're Aaron?" "Yeah." She hesitated, then said, "I think something's wrong at home." Aaron sat beside her, letting silence do the heavy lifting. He didn't push. He didn't probe. He just said, "You're safe here. Start wherever you need." And just like that, another light turned on. The sky over Texas had that faded denim hue, stretched wide with streaks of gold. It was one of those quiet evenings where everything seemed suspended in a slow, tender breath. Aaron and Jamal sat on the hood of Jamal's car, parked by the old field behind the youth center, the same spot they used to hang out before everything. No words for a while, just the creak of cooling metal, the chirp of crickets, and the slow exhale of wind through long grass. "I used to think a hero was someone who showed up big," Jamal said finally, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Like, dramatic, flashy, saving people in front of a crowd." Aaron gave a quiet smile. "And now?" "Now I think a hero's just someone who sees what's there, what others miss." Aaron nodded. "Someone who doesn't look away." They watched the sun begin its slow dive. "You ever wish we hadn't looked?" Jamal asked. Aaron was silent a moment. Then, "Sometimes. Not because I regret it, just it changed everything." "Yeah," Jamal whispered. "It really did. That change wasn't just about attention or reputation. It went deeper, into the way they moved through the world, into the choices they made without even realizing." Aaron's mom once told him, "Since that night, you've been softer, not weaker, just more aware." She meant it as a compliment, and it landed. He had begun to notice things more, the way a kid flinched at loud noises, the tension in a teenager's laugh, the look someone gave when their phone buzzed and their whole body stiffened. It wasn't paranoia. It was empathy, sharpened to a fine edge. Jamal felt it too. One day at the grocery store, he noticed a small girl standing alone by the cereal aisle, eyes wide. He approached gently, knelt beside her. "Hey," he said softly, "you looking for someone?" She nodded quickly, lip trembling. He stayed with her until her mom appeared, panicked and breathless. When she thanked him, Jamal just said, "We all need someone who'll stop long enough to see." Stories of that nature kept finding them. Not always dramatic rescues, but moments where their instinct to act quietly shifted someone's path. A late-night walk home with a scared classmate. A phone call when someone's post felt too heavy. A check-in at the right time. They never thought of themselves as saviors, just boys who couldn't forget the cost of silence. One evening, the youth center held a community night. Food trucks lined the parking lot. Kids played soccer under portable lights. Families laughed beneath string lights, and music hummed in the background. Aaron was helping set up a folding table when a woman approached. She looked familiar, though older, stronger now. A quiet confidence in the way she held herself. "Are you Aaron?" she asked. He turned, and time stood still. She didn't have to say it. He knew, the same eyes, softer now, less afraid, but unmistakably hers. "I think you saved my life," she said gently. Aaron's throat tightened. "You remember?" "Not everything," she admitted. "But I remember the look you gave me. I remember knowing someone saw me." She paused, eyes shining. "That was the moment I stopped being invisible." He didn't know what to say, so he nodded, and the tears welled unspoken between them. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded card. "I'm working with a recovery nonprofit now," she said. "We help survivors rebuild their lives. Thought, maybe you and your friend would want to help. Tell your story." He took the card with shaking hands. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, we would." They stood there, the music soft behind them, the lights strung like stars overhead. In that moment, neither of them felt broken or heroic or out of place. They just felt seen. The invitation came 2 weeks later. It was printed on simple cardstock. No glossy photos, no big logos, just soft, serif letters that read, "Voices of Survival, a community evening of stories and hope." Jamal flipped the card over in his hands. "You ever done anything like this?" he asked Aaron. Aaron shook his head. "Public speaking isn't exactly my thing. But you want to go?" "I think we have to." They didn't rehearse a speech. They didn't write anything down. Instead, they met up at Jamal's place the night before, sat on the floor with a pitcher of lemonade between them, and talked. Not about what happened, but how it had shaped them. How they saw danger differently now. How they trusted their instincts more. How they'd come to believe that seeing someone, really seeing, could be the most powerful thing a person could do. "I don't want to make it about us," Aaron said. "It's not," Jamal replied. "It's about what anyone can do." That night, Aaron fell asleep wondering how many people had passed that red light before them, how many had glanced and then looked away. The auditorium was small but full. Rows of folding chairs filled with survivors, volunteers, community leaders. A low hum of anticipation filled the space, anchored in warmth, not spectacle. They sat near the back, waiting their turn. The girl, now a young woman, opened the evening. Her voice was soft, but sure. She told her story in her own words, not lingering on the darkest moments, but on the light that followed. On the two figures in the other car, one hand raised like a lighthouse beam. She didn't name them, but every eye in the room turned toward Aaron and Jamal when she finished. Their cue came next. Walking to the front, Aaron felt his legs stiffen slightly, his throat dry. Jamal offered a quick, grounding nod. Aaron began. He spoke slowly, plainly, not for drama, but for clarity. He described the light, the glance, the silent cry for help. He described the weight of that moment, the one where you have to decide whether what you think you're seeing is enough to risk being wrong. "I think a lot of us wait for permission," he said, "to act, to care. But that night taught me, sometimes you are the permission." Jamal picked up from there. "We didn't know what we were doing, but we did know what it felt like to be ignored, to be dismissed. We didn't want her to feel that way." He paused, voice thick with memory. "So we called. We followed. We stayed with it. There was no applause, just stillness, the kind of quiet where you can feel hearts shifting." After the event, people approached them, not with praise, but with gratitude. A retired teacher who had once missed a chance to intervene. A mother who'd never told anyone about her teenage trauma. A young man who said simply, "I didn't think guys like us could be this." The director of the nonprofit came up last. "I've heard hundreds of stories," she said, "but the ones that stick are the ones where ordinary people stepped up when it would have been easier to walk away." She handed them a flyer. "Would you be open to doing this again? Other towns, other centers? We could use more voices like yours." Jamal looked at Aaron. Aaron smiled, small but sure. "Yeah," he said. "Let's keep showing up." Later that night, driving home beneath a velvet sky, Jamal rolled the window down and let the wind rush in. "You realize," he said, "this whole thing started because we stopped at a red light." Aaron nodded, eyes on the road ahead. "Maybe that's where change always starts," he said. A pause, a moment to notice. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of meaning, of memory, of quiet, unfolding hope. Their second speaking event was in Austin, nearly 4 hours away. This time, they drove up early. A beat-up backpack in the back seat, filled with spare clothes, snack wrappers, and a worn-out copy of the nonprofit's itinerary. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt right. Aaron kept glancing at the GPS, even though Jamal insisted they weren't in a rush. "We've got time," Jamal said, stretching his legs onto the dashboard. "Besides, you know the best stories don't run on schedule." Aaron laughed softly. "You just don't want to walk in early and have to mingle." Exactly. They arrived at a modest community center tucked between a library and a diner. Nothing flashy. Just a plain brick building with a hand-painted sign that read, "Here, every voice matters." Inside, the chairs were arranged in a tight circle instead of rows. It wasn't a performance. It was a conversation. The room was quiet, not from shyness, but from something deeper, a collective holding of breath. These were survivors, many of whom had never shared their stories aloud. Some were newly safe. Some were still figuring out what safe even meant. Aaron and Jamal weren't the keynote. They were just part of the circle. One woman, maybe in her 50s, said, "I always thought no one would believe me if I spoke up, or that I'd sound crazy. It means something to hear two young men say, 'We believed her right away.' That means a lot." Jamal blinked hard. Aaron just nodded. "People don't need to know every detail to offer help," Aaron said. "They just need to choose not to walk away." After the circle closed, people lingered, not to talk loudly or take photos, but to stand near one another, to be in the presence of shared witness. A man approached them in the parking lot as they were packing up. "I was in that neighborhood the same night," he said quietly. "I saw the same car. I noticed something too. But I didn't do anything." Neither of them judged him. Jamal just said, "Now you know. You'll see it different next time." The man nodded, eyes wet. "Thank you," he said, "for being the kind of men I want my son to grow up to be." On the drive back, the highway shimmered under the late sun, and Aaron's mind wandered. He remembered how, as a kid, he used to think courage looked like capes and explosions, but now he knew courage was quieter. It was a gut check, a glance that lasted half a second too long, a call that made your hands shake. And yet, it changed everything. He looked over at Jamal, who had dozed off with his hoodie pulled over his face, mumbling softly to the rhythm of the tires. There was something beautiful about this. Two ordinary friends, just driving, showing up when asked, saying yes to stories that were still learning how to speak. Back in their hometown, things stayed grounded. They still worked, studied, ran errands. Jamal helped coach a middle school basketball team. Aaron started tutoring teens who'd fallen behind during the pandemic years. But under it all, this thread of something steady, something rare. A readiness to step into the quiet places others avoided. One afternoon, Aaron sat on the youth center porch, talking to a teenage boy who'd gotten into trouble at school. "You think I can fix this?" the boy asked. Aaron didn't offer easy answers. He just shrugged gently. I think showing up is the first step, he said. That's what we did that night. We just showed up, and we kept going. The boy nodded slowly. The power of presence. It echoed, even when words failed. That night, Aaron added something new to the worn-out note Jamal had written years ago. He flipped the back and scrawled, "We kept going." And that was enough. He folded it and slipped it into his journal. Some truths didn't need to be shouted. They just needed to be held. The third event was different. This time it was held in a high school auditorium, the kind with dimmed house lights, a small stage, and rows of teenage faces only half paying attention at first. Aaron stood at the back with his hands tucked into the pockets of his jacket, scanning the crowd. Jamal leaned over. This crowd's got that look. What look? The "I'm only here because my teacher made me" look, Aaron chuckled. Good. That's the one we want. Because they remembered being those kids, bored, skeptical, half asleep in the back row, and they knew that somewhere in there was a listener who didn't know they needed to hear this story. When it was their turn to speak, the energy in the room shifted slightly. Not a lot, just a subtle hush. One by one, phones were lowered, eyes lifted. Aaron didn't dive into the story with sirens or suspense. He began softly. Imagine driving home from work, just another normal night. You're not looking for trouble. You're not trying to be brave. You're just trying to get home. And then, you see something. He paused, letting the weight settle. Not something dramatic, just a look, a gesture, a moment that asks, "Will you do something?" Jamal took over then, steady and calm. We were two teenagers, no badge, no training, just instincts, just this gut feeling that said, something's wrong. Their words weren't designed to impress. They were designed to open a door. One girl in the second row sat forward, elbows on knees, eyes sharp. Jamal noticed. He adjusted his voice ever so slightly, like he was speaking just to her. We called 911. We followed the car. We gave updates. And at the end of it all, we realized the difference between rescue and regret is just one moment of courage. Afterward, the principal thanked them, but it was the students who mattered most. A small group lingered near the stage. A few asked questions. One boy, tall, quiet, clearly nervous, pulled Aaron aside. "My sister went through something," he said softly, "and no one believed her. Not even me. But hearing you guys talk, it kind of made me think maybe I should ask her how she's really doing." Aaron placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's never too late to see someone." Another student handed Jamal a crumpled piece of paper. It had a simple drawing, two stick figures, one with a hand raised, the other waving back, and the words, "You saw her. Thank you." That night, back home, they sat on the curb outside Aaron's house, sharing fries from a paper bag, letting the night breeze cool their skin. "You think we're making a difference?" Jamal asked. Aaron took a slow sip of soda. "Yeah, not a big one, but a real one." Jamal nodded. "That girl in row 2, he said. She looked like she had something to say, like she'd been waiting for someone to go first." Aaron didn't respond, just looked up at the stars quietly. In this journey, it wasn't the media coverage or the interviews that stayed with them. It was the silences, the paused breaths, the unspoken thanks, the quiet nods in crowded rooms, the kind of impact that didn't go viral, but changed someone's day, or week, or life. In those moments, they understood something they hadn't before. You don't have to save the world. You just have to make it a little safer for someone else to speak. Fall arrived gently in Texas. The trees held onto their leaves a little longer, stubborn against the wind, and the mornings took on that crisp softness that hinted at something shifting, not just in the air, but inside people too. By now, Aaron and Jamal had spoken at 8 different events. Each one left something behind. A name, a letter, a moment that stayed like a pebble in the pocket of memory. But this one felt different. It wasn't in a school or a community center. It was a small gathering inside a women's shelter just outside of Dallas. Intimate, quiet, no microphones, no cameras. Just 10 chairs arranged in a circle and a laminated sign on the wall that read, "You are not your past." They were invited not as speakers, but as witnesses. "I don't want you to tell your story," the coordinator had said. "I want you to listen first." So they did. For 2 hours, they listened. A woman who had escaped an abusive marriage with her 2 kids. A teenager who ran from a trafficking ring with nothing but the clothes on her back. A mother who hadn't spoken to her daughter in years, now learning how to forgive herself. Each voice carried a weight words could barely hold. Aaron kept his hands folded tight, his eyes lowered. Jamal sat still, nodding when needed, silent otherwise. When it was their turn to speak, if they wanted to, the room didn't expect answers, only truth. So Aaron told it plain. We were scared. We didn't know if we were doing the right thing, but we knew not doing anything would have haunted us longer. Jamal added, "We didn't rescue anyone. We just refused to ignore her." A woman in the corner, silent until now, looked up. "That's what I wish someone had done for me," she said. "Just not looked away." The words didn't land like thunder. They landed like rain, soft, steady, needed. Afterward, one of the shelter volunteers approached them outside. "We've had speakers before," she said. "But what you gave tonight, it wasn't a speech. It was permission." "Permission for what?" Aaron asked. "To be seen without being explained." Jamal stood there, watching the last light dip below the trees. "Feels like that's all people really want," he said. "To not have to prove they matter." Aaron nodded, quiet. It was strange, this path they'd stumbled into. From one moment of instinct to a journey of empathy. They hadn't asked for it, but they also hadn't walked away. That night, they stayed at a motel off the highway. Nothing fancy. Cracked wallpaper, humming a sea, the smell of old carpet and detergent. But Jamal couldn't sleep. He paced the room a while, then sat down at the desk and pulled out a notebook. He wrote slowly. "There are 2 kinds of eyes in this world. The ones that pass through you, and the ones that stop. Be the ones that stop." He tore the page out, folded it, and left it under the motel Bible on the nightstand. "Someone will find it," he whispered. Aaron stirred from his bed. "What are you doing?" "Leaving a seed," Jamal said. Aaron smiled in the dark. "You're getting poetic now." "Man," Jamal grinned, "you ride with survivors long enough and poetry finds you." They drifted off to sleep, the distant sound of highway tires like waves on some far-off beach. The road ahead was still long, but they were learning how to walk it with open eyes and open hands. The invitations slowed down by winter. The nonprofit had new campaigns. Schools were busy with exams. Life, as it does, began pulling people in different directions. But for Aaron and Jamal, the story never paused. It had simply woven itself into their everyday. Aaron picked up more hours at the community center, running an after-school program for middle schoolers. Jamal started working part-time at a bookstore downtown, a quiet spot with sun-faded shelves and the smell of coffee baked into the walls. "Guess we're back to normal life," Jamal said one afternoon, flipping the sign to closed as the last customer wandered out. Aaron, perched on a stool by the register, raised an eyebrow. "Does it feel like normal?" Jamal shook his head. "Not really." Because something had shifted, not in how the world saw them, but in how they saw the world. They noticed more. Noticed the girl on the bus who always chose the seat closest to the driver. The kid at the center who flinched every time a door closed too hard. The woman who smiled at everyone but never met anyone's eyes, and they acted, not with grand gestures, but with presence. A word, a question, a moment of attention. One evening, after helping a student navigate a tough conversation with her parents, Aaron stepped outside into the cool dusk and found Jamal waiting by the steps, sipping tea from a paper cup. "You know," Aaron said, "I keep thinking about her." "Who?" Jamal asked. "The girl, from that night." He didn't have to explain which one. The image of her face in the back seat had become an echo they both carried. "Me too," Jamal said. "But I think about her different now." "How so?" "I used to think about how scared she must have been. Now I think about how strong she was. To get our attention. To keep hoping someone would see her." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sky fade from blue to gray. "Do you ever wonder what she's doing now?" Aaron asked. Jamal nodded. "Sometimes. But I don't think it's about knowing. I think it's enough to know she can live her life now. That she got that chance." They sat for a while, letting the quiet settle in. Then Jamal reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. "What's that?" Aaron asked. "A letter," Jamal said. "From her." Aaron froze. "You're kidding." Jamal shook his head. "It came last week. I didn't open it right away. Wasn't sure I was ready." He handed it over. Aaron turned the envelope in his hands. No return address. Just their names written in neat, small print. "You want to read it together?" he asked. Jamal nodded. Aaron slid his finger under the flap and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The handwriting inside was careful, almost meditative. "I've started over. I've moved cities. I've changed my name. I'm studying now. Something quiet, something that helps people. I won't say more than that, but I wanted you to know. That night changed my life. You didn't just see me. You believed me, and that made all the difference. Some people save lives by fighting. Some do it by staying. You stayed, and I'll never forget that." They sat with the letter for a long time. No tears, no dramatics. Just the quiet, pulsing weight of knowing that their story had folded into someone else's. Not as a headline, but as a thread in the fabric of healing. Jamal finally broke the silence. "She's still out there." Aaron nodded. "Living, healing, becoming." They didn't frame the letter, didn't post about it, didn't share it with the nonprofit. They just folded it carefully and placed it in a small wooden box that sat on the shelf of Aaron's bedroom, between a cracked Polaroid of their first event and the original napkin note Jamal had scribbled years ago. Life didn't always give closure, but it gave continuation, and sometimes that was enough. Spring returned quietly. It didn't announce itself with sudden blossoms or storms. It crept in, soft winds, longer evenings, sunlight that lingered a little longer each day. Life, in its gentle rhythm, was beginning again. Aaron stood by the window of the youth center one morning, watching a group of kids play basketball on the cracked asphalt court. The laughter carried up through the open window, light and untamed. He smiled, coffee in hand, and let the warmth settle in his chest. Down the street, Jamal arrived at the bookstore early, unlocking the door with a quiet reverence. He liked the mornings, the stillness of unopened books, the hush before the day began. On the counter sat a note from the owner. "Two students from the high school want to interview you. They said you're kind of a local hero." He laughed, shaking his head. "Local," he whispered. "We really didn't go that far after all." And yet, they had. Not in miles, maybe, but in meaning. That night, they met up like they always did. A small table at their favorite diner, fries between them, music low on the speakers. It had become a ritual, a way to check in, to stay grounded in the story that had changed them both. Aaron had brought a new book, a memoir from one of the survivors they'd met months ago. "She's doing public talks now," he said, sliding the book across the table. Jamal turned it over, traced the title with his thumb. "She found her voice." Aaron nodded. "They all are." They sat for a moment, letting that truth settle. "You think we'll ever stop telling this story?" Jamal asked. Aaron looked thoughtful. "Maybe someday, but I don't think the story's about us anymore. It's about what it started." They didn't need applause or awards. What mattered was what continued. The way others stepped up, reached out, noticed things they used to overlook. The girl at the shelter who now volunteered with new arrivals. The boy in the auditorium who called his sister that night. The quiet changes, the ripples. Later that week, they received another letter, this time from a teacher at a school they'd visited early on. It wasn't long, just a few sentences. "One of my students reported something yesterday. She said she remembered your story, said it helped her speak up. I thought you'd want to know." Aaron and Jamal read the letter in silence. "Still happening," Jamal said. Aaron folded the paper gently. "Still matters." They added the note to the small box of keepsakes, not because they needed reminders, but because they understood now. Some stories aren't finished. They just become part of someone else's beginning. And even on the days when the world felt heavy, when the news was full of things they couldn't fix, they held on to that truth. That courage wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was just a moment, a glance in a parking lot, a phone call with a shaking voice, a decision to care. And in their quiet way, Aaron and Jamal had taught others how to choose that moment, to pause, to notice, to believe. Their lives had unfolded in unexpected ways, not as heroes in capes, but as young men who kept showing up, even when no one asked them to. And every time they told the story, they weren't just revisiting a night on the side of a Texas road. They were planting seeds, seeds of attention, of trust, of the simple truth that sometimes being human is the bravest thing of all. There are stories we forget, and there are stories that shape us. Aaron and Jamal never set out to be remembered, but they chose, in one small, trembling moment, to respond to the world with kindness, not indifference. That choice rippled outward, changing the life of a girl in the back seat, and touching thousands more through quiet retellings, one voice at a time. They didn't seek credit. They didn't build brands. They built trust, the kind that whispers instead of shouts. Their story is not about fame. It's about what happens when ordinary people see something and choose not to look away. And maybe after all, that's what true heroism looks like. Not grand gestures, but the courage to stay, to ask, to care, and to act even when it would be easier not to. So wherever you are tonight, listening, maybe in your car, or lying in bed, or walking through the quiet of your own life, hold this story close. Because the next time someone silently asks for help, you'll know what to do.